Hello fellow collectors, I hope you are doing very well indeed. Today I continue with my monthly series where I talk about the best films I watched in the preceding month, and today we tackle my June. Well, June was almost the opposite to my May, as I didn't really have all that many great ones to choose from for this video, so it was a much more average month of viewing. Though of course I did watch those three excellent films all featuring Frances McDormand during June, and so if you're interested in my thoughts on her as an actor as well as those three films, you are most welcome to check out my previous video, which I'll leave a link to in the description. But despite June's more average nature, I still managed to get through some really interesting films, including my first ones from Vinegar Syndrome's partner labels like Canny and Circle Collective, which were really great first experiences of what they have to offer. But that's more than enough of my rambling, so let's get right into things and talk about the best films I watched in June. First up, and we have Between Midnight and Dawn. From 1950 and directed by Gordon Douglas, it stars Edmund O'Brien, who I always think is quite an underrated actor, as well as Mark Stevens, Donald Booker and Gale Storm, which is a fantastic name. Well, I just had a hankering for some good film noir in June, as I felt like it had been ages since I'd seen any, and I was just in the perfect mood for a dark, atmospheric film with dames and crooks and guns, and so I dived back into the excellent Colombian noir box sets from Indicator that so many of us have had the pleasure of making our way through, and I put this one on from Volume 4. This film I felt just had a great heart to it. We have two cops, partners and buddies, that met during the war, who have this wonderful rapport and relationship, and they meet one of the new radio operators for the precinct, the beautiful Kate, played by Gale Storm, and a great trio of friends is born. Of course, romantic feelings start getting involved, as well as a deadly battle with a crime boss that is perhaps getting too big for his britches, and we are told that him and his gang did their shooting at home, instead of in World War II, putting them in an even more shameful light. There are some truly shocking moments in this one which hit pretty hard and unexpectedly. For a film which in many ways is doing a sort of part propaganda piece in promoting the police, I felt it was actually a lot more complex than the usual type of films that try to do that. We have jealousy, murder, revenge and love all mixed up together here in a great noir fashion, and it made for a really compelling watch. It also has some great banter. The jovial relationship between our three main characters really grows wonderfully, and you really start to care about all three. Featuring solid performances all round, it's always great to see Edmund O'Brien, who in particular is an actor that I really enjoy. I've only seen a few of his films, but he always reminds me a little bit of Humphrey Bogart for some reason. He has a little of that air about him, I think, and it makes for fantastic viewing. And I can highly recommend The Killers with Burt Lancaster and Ava Gardner if you want to see a particularly great performance from Edmund O'Brien. Well, as you might expect from any good film noir, this one also has a solid and moving ending, which, while not all that surprising, hits all the right notes to tie up the story nicely. Now this one does have a more average rating on Letterboxd with just a 3.2, but what can I say, I was in the perfect mood for it, and it was one that I thoroughly enjoyed and certainly will revisit in the future. Next up is The Beast, from 2023, though actually just released here last month in the UK, directed by Bertrand Bonello and starring Léa Seydoux and George McKay. I was lucky enough to catch this one at the cinema, as I'd been looking forward to it for months. Léa Seydoux is of course one of my favourite actors, as she seems to be able to move between the huge Hollywood blockbusters to the small budget indie films with a seamless ease that I just wish other actors would be able to manage. The Beast is a story that weaves a tale through various time periods, similar to something like Cloud Atlas, which also happens to be a film that I love, so if you also enjoyed that one, well, you're in for a real treat here, though of course there are a lot of differences. I'd say the film is sort of about the idea of soulmates, or perhaps just deep, almost unbreakable connections between people, no matter the time or space, as we are sort of reincarnated and live our lives over and over again. Sort of like two magnets that are separated but will always be inexplicably drawn back towards each other. However, it's not quite as straightforward as that. There is an extra element here that really adds some spice, shall we say, and makes this film really quite impactful, but I won't spoil that for anyone. So if you're in the mood for a sci-fi, or a period piece, or a relatively modern day story, well, the good news is you don't have to choose because they are all brought together here in a very compelling fashion. This is a film which constantly keeps you off balance. It keeps up the mystery and the intrigue, and it has a great pacing to it as well. Also firmly anchored by some incredible performances. Obviously, I like her a lot anyway, but truly Léa Seydoux proves again here why she is one of the greatest actors working today, as she delivers sublime performance that is nuanced and powerful and captivating. George Mackay is an actor that I've only seen once before, and that was in 1917, which he was absolutely brilliant in, so he was more of an unknown element for me here, but my goodness, he also delivered a superb performance as well. And together, though they might not have the most sparkling or perhaps immediate chemistry, so to speak, I think that's almost the point here. You can just tell there is a connection, which seems to be beyond both of their abilities to comprehend. This was a mind-bending tale that I think in part at least serves as a bit of a warning about AI and also about the importance of our humanity, and that despite our inherent failings that come with that, like the consequences of our emotions and the experiences that can lead to pain, actually how integral those are to make us who we are. Then we have Our Little Sister, from 2015 and directed by Hirokazu Kore-eda, who I talked about quite a lot in last month's video. This one stars Haruka Ayase, Masami Nagasawa, Kaho and Suzu Hirose. My goodness, this was fantastic. As I continue my journey into Kore-eda's films, with each one I think, well, it can't get any better than that, surely, and yet each time it does get better. I am simply amazed at the simple beauty of these tender stories that he tells so incredibly well. This one was a wonderful story, again about the usual topic for Kore-eda, which is family, and also love and acceptance, and I think finding your place in the world. We meet three adult sisters who live together and whose father had long ago left their family, that divorce having left its mark on each one of the sisters. The father had then remarried another woman with whom he'd had another daughter. His second wife had then passed away and he'd once again remarried, bringing that younger daughter with him into that third marriage. We come into the story when the father has recently passed away and his three adult daughters are going to go to his funeral. While they're there, they finally meet their much younger half-sister and end up inviting her to stay with them. This was such a heartwarming and sweet tale. While the story itself revolves around family breakdown and the bitterness and lasting damage that divorce can cause, from it, in this instance, comes at least one wonderful thing, which is a new sister for these three women and much needed family for the younger girl. You get to witness this coming together of the four of them, as the younger finds a home, as she is welcomed in and accepted and starts to flourish, and the older sisters impart their wisdom, warmth and togetherness. And that's not to say that things always go smoothly, as like with any family there are arguments, struggles and annoyances, but those melt away, as like with so many things which might come and go in our lives, like romantic relationships that might not last, or friends or jobs. It wonderfully shows the consistency of family and home and the importance of that permanence. Really another absolute triumph from Kore-eda here, and I was so happy to see that Plain Archive will be releasing a premium version of it, with the pre-orders for it coming up this month in July, which I will certainly be going for. And last but not least, we have Shadows in Paradise, a film from 1986 and directed by Aki Kaurismäki. It stars Matti Pallonpää and Katie Autinen, along with several others of the usual suspects for a Kaurismäki film. I've been thoroughly enjoying making my way through this wonderful Kaurismäki box set recently, and I'm constantly finding myself surprised by the range of films and genres that he's dabbled in, from comedy to crime to absurdist and even to his own version of the French New Wave. Shadows in Paradise, though, is part of one of his staples, which is the classic Kaurismäki romance, and it gives you everything you might come to love about them. It's full of that brilliant deadpan sarcasm and comedy, and matched with Matti Pallonpää and Katie Autinen's easy chemistry, this was such a great watch. We have the story of a bin man and a supermarket cashier who meet each other when she notices he has a cut on his hand, that she then handily cleans him up and sorts it out, and as it so often does, one moment leads to another and they end up becoming involved. This is no clear-cut romance though, and is classic Kaurismäki, who uses these settings and starting points of isolation for the characters, and then they enter almost kind of a dance, which is a will they, won't they get together, what are they thinking, you're not too sure. And as usual, circumstances play an integral part in the romance too, as she is forced to leave her job and flat, leaving her in a state of some desperation, though of course you wouldn't be able to tell it from anyone's expressions. But whether that says something about us needing a bit of a push to find something better, or something better finding us when times get tough, well, that's up to you to decide. Overall, it's funny, it's sweet, and with a lot of his films, I'd say it has a lot to say about being better together than we are separately. Another absolutely great one from Kaurismäki. And moving on, we get into my segment on films that I haven't quite made my mind upon yet, that might have been particularly curious or mysterious or intriguing in some way. And actually this month I had a couple of them, but I'll talk about just one here, which is Sometimes I Think About Dying. A film from 2023, though released here in the UK just a couple months ago. It's directed by Rachel Lambert and stars Daisy Ridley and Dave Mahay as our main characters. It was also great to see Brittany O'Grady in a small role here, as I hadn't seen her in anything else since season 1 of The White Lotus, which I thought she was really great in. This was such an interesting watch, which had a lot of elements that really appealed to me. It's a small and quiet story for the most part, very character driven but with plenty to keep you engaged. Daisy Ridley plays a woman who works in a small office, and she clearly struggles with normal social interactions. And I share at least some of her reticence for those office functions, like the scene where they have to go around a room, introduce themselves and say a favourite food. You see this great, almost physical repulsion from her when this is mentioned, and as I've just started a new job recently, I am having a similar reaction because that sort of thing is a constant in my life at the moment. But clearly for Ridley's character, even the normal everyday interactions don't come easily to her, and as a result she is somewhat an excluded and isolated character. So, her office gets a new starter, and the two begin to develop a relationship of sorts, and we watch events unfold. This one has a lot of really funny moments, some very cringeworthy moments, and really is just about a woman's world becoming a little bit larger. It has a really great performance from Daisy Ridley here, and I hope she makes more of these smaller films because she's such a fantastic actor. I have to say, I did think this would be a film about depression and the monotony of life, given the title, Sometimes I Think About Dying, but I don't really think it is at all, though I do think it is a film about escape to some extent. But beyond that, I'm still not really sure what the motif represented, and it's a film I'm still thinking about. What was the message here, if any? A really intriguing watch. And so, that brings us to my honourable mentions list. And I'll start with 100 Yen Love. Unfortunately, I have a bootleg of it here, as I didn't realise that when I bought it, though it does seem to be very hard to get hold of with English subtitles, as I did buy a German Blu-ray which I then had to return. And aside from one horribly disturbing and seemingly out of place scene, this was a really interesting watch. By no means your usual type of boxing film, but quite brilliant. And then we have Inbetween Girl, which I got in the Vinegar Syndrome partner sale, and really enjoyed this one. It's a great coming of age tale. Next is Henry Fool, which I really liked, but that I've not quite made my mind up on either. It's an interesting one from Hal Hartley, and I will say that this has the funniest proposal scene I have ever seen. I was crying tears of laughter, and I can highly recommend it for that incredible scene alone. And last but not least, we have Que la Fete Commence, or Let Joy Reign Supreme. I have now begun my journey into the films of Bertrand Tavernier, and this was the first one in that box set. It's a great period piece that was really compelling and I think had a lot to say about the rich-poor divide. And well, that brings us to the end of the video and my June in film. Though it was perhaps a more average month of watching, it was still a really enjoyable one. I hope your June was full of great movies, and I hope your July is going wonderfully well too. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.